Welcome back to AI for Founders. I'm Ryan Estes. Now, what happens when a former founding member of Spotify decides that bedtime stories aren't personal enough? You get DreamStories.ai, a company turning your kid into the hero of their own beautifully illustrated adventure. But here's the twist. Ricardo Santos didn't just build another AI startup, he's building what he calls an agentic content studio, where creativity itself becomes intelligent, adaptive, and deeply human. And while most of Silicon Valley is chasing scale, Ricardo is chasing something rarer: intimacy at scale. In today's episode, we unpack how DreamStories.ai went from a wild idea about AI-made bedtime stories to selling nearly 100,000 physical books, a category-defining bridge between storytelling, AI, and the future of personalized media. You'll learn how Ricardo thinks about creating an infinite content machine, what Spotify taught him about building for global audiences, and why the next billion-dollar opportunity might be hiding in stories small enough to fit in a child's hand. This episode is for founders who believe AI isn't replacing creativity, it's amplifying it. If you've ever dreamed of building products that feel one-on-one, this conversation is your blueprint. Okay, 3 sentences on the newsletter. Every week, AIforFounders.co, I break down how today's founders are using AI to build unfair advantages. Get frameworks, news, founder interviews, no fluff, straight to your inbox. If you love building things that feel impossible until they work, this newsletter is your tribe. If this episode sparks one new idea for your company, pay it forward, drop us a 5-star review, and write your favorite insight from the show. This episode is brought to you by Kitcaster, the easiest way for founders to become thought leaders through podcast guesting. Here's the deal. Podcasts are the most authentic, high-trust media channel on the planet. Kitcaster gets you booked on the shows your future customers are already listening to. You show up, share your story, and walk away with evergreen content that builds authority, backlinks, and inbound leads, all without buying ads or dancing on TikTok. We've booked more than 35,000 interviews for more than 800 clients, generating millions in earned media value. If you're ready to tell your story, scale your reputation, and create conversations that convert, go to kitcaster.com, because the best way to sell your brand is to talk about what you love. That's Kitcaster by Moburst. All right. Coffee is great, but coffee won't prep your meetings for you. It'll just keep you awake while you panic, hastily scrolling through LinkedIn at 6:59 a.m. Ambient, however, will prep your meetings. Each morning you get a founder-tuned briefing sourced overnight from your calendar, your meeting history, and the web. It's like walking into every call with a cheat sheet that you didn't have to write. No more scrambling, no more guessing, just context, confidence, and focus. And if you're raising money, Ambient investor dossiers are an absolute must-have. You'll know the investor's portfolio, their interests, and their latest moves before you even step into the room. You'll even get a heads up on red flags. Think of it as the caffeine upgrade that your calendar actually needs. Prep while you sleep, perform while you're awake. Sign up for free at ambient.us. Go check it out at ambient.us. That's ambient.us. I just want to say, Ricardo, thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing great.
Yeah, fantastic. So to get us started with context, please give us a quick description of your company, DreamStories.ai.
Yeah, so DreamStories.ai or at DreamStories.ai, we're building what is best described as an agentic content studio, starting with children's books. We started the company a little over a year ago, off of an idea I've had for many, many years have this idea of that one day content would all be personalized for you, sort of made personally for you. And so we started playing with basically building the platform to build that, right? And we decided to start with children's content, in part because I have a young child, and I noticed how basically we had all these moments of reading bedtime stories to him, and I started playing with the idea of focusing on that as the first product that we could do.
Incredible. So I go to DreamStories.ai, I upload a picture of my kid. Do I create the story or are there like kind of templates available?
That's a great question. So with a little bit of a lengthy answer, which I'll give it to you. So today, we're with the way I like to tell the story is that there's sort of a range of what is maybe described as agency, right? There's people that there's people that on the one hand really just want to sit at a TV, for instance, and watch whatever's playing. And then there's people that, let's say, have so high intent and the skill and the money to do it that they'll create their own content. In this case, if we're talking about video or something like that, right? And so there's this like long range in between. And so we, in the context, if I give an example, for instance, of, I don't know, making games or something like that, there's a small set of people that can actually, for instance, make games. Most people play them. And then there's this like emergent platforms like Roblox, where people with at a sort of can create games, right, without having to be a professional game developer, right? And so in our case, we decided to focus first on this subset of people that would create a story if it would be made very easy for them, and thus we focus first on those that come in and pick an existing template. But of course, we're evolving the platform as we grow to essentially cover more. More creative tools, so people can, we already let people edit the text, and eventually create their own narratives for, we certainly have a lot of demand for it, right?
Yeah. And I gotta say, the video on your website is one of the most adorable things I have ever seen. I couldn't imagine a better sales tool. So I go to DreamStories.ai, upload a picture of my kid. It puts my kid as the hero in the story, and then you print the book and you get the book, and your child gets to be like, oh my gosh, it's me, and every single page. What a brilliant idea.
Yeah, and but what's actually the funniest part was that when we first built the prototype, so you also asked me about, okay, can I create a story, right? And the story is that I wanted to create a story, as in me, right? I grew up reading Tintin, or Tintin in French. I was obsessed with it. And so in a sense, the first story was one I wanted to create for my child, where essentially, and where he was Tintin, right? He was going on an adventure and he was going to different places, which is kind of what I grew up with. And so that was the story I envisioned, and it was quite hard to put together, But as we built tools, we started launching a few more and so forth. And like I said, now we're getting to a point where other people will be able soon to start creating their own, right? In the same way that I created mine, because in my case, that's the experience I want to give to my child. But we got people that that have other things, right? And even other value systems or religions or some things that they want to put into a story. And that's the beauty of it, right? That you can empower people to do that and explore, what for them, what they would like, where they would like to see their kids, right? And the values they would like to propel.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, so let's talk big picture here. This is an incredible product, and we'll get into the economics of the business a little bit, but where do you see Dream Stories landing in 5 years?
Yeah, that is a great question, right? So the way I usually like to tell people there's as there's a lot of people coming into the AI now, and I've been in the space for a while, but more intensively now. But the way I like to kind of say is that this is actually an idea I had many years ago. I used to I suppose my first claim to fame, if you will, was leading growth new markets at Spotify. But when I joined Spotify, really in the early days, I was in the content team. And on the content team, as dealing with essentially with the content and that came from labels and artists, I started noticing like a lot of content that was personalized for people, and this is like birthday songs or love songs with a certain name. So you'd have happy birthday Ryan, or Ryan, you look good today, these types of things. And if you literally look up your name on Spotify, you'll find like a myriad of songs that include you in the name. In the name of the song, in the content. So back in 2009 or so, when I first noticed it, I had this like thought experiment of, I wonder if one day you can have, let's say, Beyonce sing a song for you, for you specifically. And I want to highlight, this was way before, I wouldn't have told you this was AI back then. It was just a thought experiment, and this was way before. Nowadays, technically, that's possible with platforms like Suno, where you could literally get Beyonce or Beyonce's voice to sing a song for you. But that's actually where the seed of this idea of like personalized content on tap first came to me, and there was an idea I had in the back of my mind. Now, of course, with Spotify, personalization is a massive thing for us, or it was in and continue to be, with basically getting to know you very good and delivering the right content for you. All my businesses since Spotify, I left at the end of 2014. All my business then have had some hint of personalization with them. And that's, I think, one of the beautiful things I think with technology is actually enabling to do that. In fact, I just helped launch a few years ago. I helped launch Neko Health, which is a health scanner, and I usually tell people that's basically the same thing in reverse, which is we're taking healthcare, which is something that is a bit of an artisan good. You go there and the doctor performs for you a service that is 101. And we're trying to scale it with technology and with AI. That's Neko Health. But that's kind of the common thesis of all my businesses. Have been like, can I deliver something that feels N of one at scale? I've done it in nutrition as well. Started for a different day, or maybe later in our conversation. And the session now I'm exploring that in content, going back to my idea. So anyway, sorry, long answer. But essentially, that's where I believe media is going as well. We already see it in advertising, where essentially ads get decided, tweaked upon by platforms like Meta at the point of impression. So they're already N of one in a way, and I think the rest of content will sort of follow suit in a way.
Yeah, unbelievable. Okay, and you're a founding member of Spotify. That's a
I was very early on in the team. Yeah.
Incredible. Okay, so a couple of things kind of come up for me when I hear you talk about that. One is the books that I really resonated when I was a kid. In the 90s, we had choose your own adventure books. You ever heard of this?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a few here, actually. Yes.
They were so fun. That's what I like to read. And then you go back and be like, oh, I went down the wrong path, got eaten by the dragon. So yep. I was already felt like I was putting myself.
You mean this one?
Amazing. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. You're putting yourself in the story. You have agency because you can choose different outcomes. It was great, and I think they've experimented with that a little bit on Netflix of different alternate endings and things. But I think to your point, people have always wanted this kind of ability and agency to craft their own fantasies. Now it's an interesting way to enter with kids, because kids get really jazzed when they see themselves. Now, do you see this personalization of in the future, I'll be James Bond and I can watch myself be James Bond on AR goggles or something like that? Or alternately, will you choose people that are familiar to you? So One thing that I saw from generative AI early on is I kind of mourned the death of art. Because I could just see it. I'd be like, oh, why would I find a new musician when I can just tell AI to make me a new Bob Marley album? Or why would I find a new actress because I just want to see Selma Hayek in everything? You could put, I want to see a whole football game of Selma Hayeks playing each other. You know what I'm saying? But maybe that's just me. I'm a weirdo. So how do you see kind of the future of generative AI as people start to have, ability to choose the characters? Now, you and I know startups aren't built in boardrooms. They're built in the wild, during 3 a.m. bug fixes, botched launches, and that one meeting where everything almost fall apart. That's what Code Story is all about. It's a podcast where tech founders break down the make or break moments behind their products, what went wrong, what went right, and what nearly wrecked everything. Hosted by Noah Labhart, Code Story goes past the highlight reel and into the honest stuff. Late pivots, brutal bugs, and somehow coming out alive with a product people actually love. If you're in the build stage, the scale stage, or the please let this feature work stage, I can relate. This show will speak to your soul. Listen to Code Story at codestory.co or wherever you get your podcast. Just search Code Story. It'll be right at the top. Because great startups aren't born, they're forged, one hard moment at a time. codestory.co. What's up, everybody? Let me hit you with some math that will blow your mind. A wealth manager using WarmStart.ai grew their assets under management by 8.5 million in 3 months. Their monthly fee, $500. That's a 1,700% return on investment in 3 months. And I get it, another AI tool, another monthly subscription. But here's what makes WarmStart different. It's not trying to find you new people to bug, it's helping you reconnect with people who already know you. As a founder, your biggest asset isn't your product or your website, it's your relationships. but most of us are terrible at nurturing them systematically. WarmStart connects your email, identifies warm contacts, and helps you craft personalized outreach that doesn't sound like a robot wrote it. The best part, you review every message before it goes out. No automation without permission. If you're ready to stop leaving money in your inbox, try warmstart.ai. Use code AIFF for $50 off your first month because the ROI on your existing relationships is probably better than any investment you'll make this year. That's warmstart.ai and use code AIFF.
Yeah, I think it's a bit more nuanced than that, right? I don't know if it lands as the best analogy, but it kind of, as you spoke, I kind of was thinking about the classical sort of, sort of Pepsi sort of testing. If you taste like, Pepsi or Cola, in a blind test, you would like Pepsi better, or at least that's the saying, right, Deals? But you like Coke better because of the brand association with it. And I think that I think we underestimate how much these things have impacts in our lives, like essentially what our friends like and so forth, and push on us. It's actually interesting. At Spotify, we had hints of both, where people sometimes really wanted to know what their friends were listening to. Others like particularly flocked to a certain sort of music friend, if you will, like some person that was actually a trendsetter. And I think those things are actually not going away. And I think also I understand your thought process, right? In terms of the death of artists as well. I actually think so, right? Because I think that at the end of the day, I do think that AI is a very powerful tool, but it's still a tool, and I still think whoever yields it still gets to ask the question of what they want, what they want to see, or how they want to sort of manifest something. So, for instance, in the case of one thing I feel actually validates my view of the world is actually what we've witnessed now with, for instance, with Soda coming out, where you see that that the thing that people actually quite liked about it was that they got to create content around people. Like you said, you mentioned Salma Hayek, right? For instance, you could create content. It's not necessarily just you. And one thing we didn't mention is that almost not, I wouldn't call it accidental, but my co-founder actually in the company, one thing he did very early on that was a happy surprise is that in one of our first prototypes, which I have laying here somewhere, he actually put myself and my wife in it as well, as in addition to the child. And in a way that actually was more both harder to pull off for technical reasons, but also funnier in a way. And we kind of, that's actually why I realized, oh shit, it's actually a social experiment, a social experience, right? So it's not actually just the kids seeing themselves. It's obviously now that we launch and we have a lot of customers, people had, I don't know, they had their pets, they had their cousins, grandparents. We've had a lot of people that, if I'm honest with you, kind of, both hard, it both breaks my heart, and it's also a very beautiful thing. People putting, diseased relatives, sometimes diseased children as a way to remember them. Again, depending on where you stand, is a beautiful thing. It also means that I feel like we have a lot of responsibility to get it right. When they do that, for sure, I feel the weight of it. So it's not necessarily just this, you could almost say, narcissistic thing of seeing yourself, right? It's about seeing the things and the people that you care about, in that represent your reality, right? Yeah. And like you said, you were saying you're putting yourself in the story. One of my favorite books is Never Ending Story. Which likewise is kind of this hybrid of that you're reading a story, but you kind of take part in it, and your mind flocks to it, and there's the lines blur, right? And so I think that's a beautiful thing, actually.
Yeah, it's incredible. And to your point, I mean, by actually printing a book, it becomes different than a TV show or a music. It's not a glowing screen. It is an experience, and especially with the kid, it's an experience you're going to have every single night, probably, at bedtime. So, it's fair time, because I tell you what, I can only read Goodnight Moon 200 times. At 201, I'm like, kid, anything else, please. I can't read Goodnight Moon one more time.
Yeah, it's actually interesting that the retention is great in that sense, right? Because kids do like repetition for sure, right?
Yeah, 100%. Cool. Let's talk a little bit about the tech stack of the company, kind of what you're using to produce the images, and then how you financed and actually kind of built structure around the business.
Yeah, so okay, let's start first with the tech stack. So we spent a lot of time building I guess what best described as an orchestration pipeline to sort of get it done. It's actually as you know, things in AI are moving so fast that things get, the field evolves quickly. So if I were to start again today, probably be somewhat easier. And we obviously we keep up with it, trying to keep updating it. But we actually, in the beginning, a lot of it was just, as I told you, we wanted to focus on this segment of people that had no technical skills. Of course, if you have some advanced skills, you can use Midjourney or something like that. If you're really good at prompting, you can get really good images out of it. Actually, consistent characters is a problematic area. Is something that even now there's a lot of companies coming up that literally their model announcement is that finally we got character consistency. It's actually hard to do, across images. To remain consistent. If you've tried it, you probably know
I've
it.
tried. It's extremely hard, especially in video, but even
Yeah.
in pictures too, like background
Yeah.
changes, just
Right.
like having consistency within the face. Yeah.
And then there's things that I think people would, unless you're a domain expert, you probably would not give it credit. For instance, when it's not that difficult for you to ask an AI model to produce, I don't know, a woman or a child, describe to them, and they produce it, because they will base off of the training data. But if you actually want it to look like your child, and your child or your partner, someone in your life, there's other specific things about them, like their smile is very specific. That's one I can tell you that usually I can show you something that looks exactly like you, and then, okay, make it smile, and you say, well, that's not me, because you recognize it. That so there's these details that actually are hard to pull off. I'll be honest with you, it has gotten easier, as in which we benefited from it actually, but we spent a lot of time building that through a combination of models, some open source models, some proprietary stuff we built and trained on. So that's essentially the where we spend most of the time, frankly, building the what I would call the personalization pipeline. As that became more stable, we've evolved more to I guess you could say, the creative tools to create the tiles themselves. And that's why I'm telling you that now we're getting closer to a point where they're becoming so easy that we can actually give that to customers themselves, right? So if you actually want to create your own story, you'll be able to do it, right? Without requiring, a lot of effort on your behalf, right?
Absolutely. And when I'm thinking about the business model, the big money in publishing is in licensing and distribution and sales, right? With this, there's not necessarily IP. How do you protect the business? If you could say, with Nano Banana and Lovable put together something comparable, it's not going to look as good as this. This looks absolutely incredible. But you might
Thank
be able
you.
to get it 80% there. How do you kind of protect the business model?
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, I think it's. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't want to invite competition. As an entrepreneur would, but it is harder to scale than again. And again, it'll be easier as time goes, but it's actually harder than you think to actually do it again consistently. Again, I have no doubt if you have a lot of agency, you'd be able to grab Nano Banana and Level and put together something for yourself. Again, to get it for a lot of other people is a very different story. But in terms of IP, that's the other thing. I actually don't think that IP per se will go away. I mean, one of the requests you get is a lot is like, people want to create stories with their favorite characters, whether this be Spider-Man or Barbie or something like that, right? They would like to have those characters. Now, we don't allow that today, but it is something that's conceivable, that you'd say, hey, wouldn't it be great for you to create stories with you? I'll give you another example. Actually, I think is more practical as well, which is, let's say that you have an audience. So let's say you, Ryan, and then you could tell the listeners that, hey, you could create a book with me and you, right? Now, what would you want to do with that? Well, you probably would want to set up a set of rules, like things that that you can get the Ryan character to do and do not, and how we should behave. But it's entirely doable, right? And let people sort of remix it, which again is kind of what Sora is doing with the cameos, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, a lot of things, there's like, oh, you could do it. I've got a buddy who put together a website called Post Malone Yourself, and you can upload a picture and it gives you like face tats and like a grill.
And then
Ridiculous. I love it though. But people aren't going to do it. So a lot of, I think, this game is like seeing where media is evolving and then being there first. So is that really important to you, that like people start to think about, oh, I can customize a book about myself, which again is like a great an already established business model where people will take their childhood pics and they print them out for mom for Mother's Day, and you get a little book, and it's awesome. This
Right.
is introducing, like, it's creating kind of a Pixar almost look and aesthetic to your kids' photos, enough that they recognize themselves, but also enough that it's stylized, that it's
Yeah.
entertainment, and it's not
And,
just
the, and,
pictures.
so, and it's also the thing, right? Which is like the reason why I like the category, and again, we'll get into funding and all these things, but when people ask me like, "But okay, Ricardo, but why do you focus on books, right? You're a guy from technology, right? You should be doing digital and so forth. Why do you focus on books?" Well, I actually chose it because it was an established category. I mean, you can search like personalized books, and they're all, not all, some are emerging, but most of them are pre-AI, so they're a bit, you could say, outdated, if you will. But the category exists, like people buy them, and to your point, they'll buy them at special holidays, so on and so forth, right? But they tend to that tends to be it, right? You'll buy it once, maybe every other year, at best, right? But there's a difference between, but this is actually where my experience comes into play, where being someone that comes from, building services and subscription services in particular, which is, well, can we turn that into a repeat behavior, right? Going beyond being a novelty and something that you actually do. That's actually why you'll notice that the books that we have right now are episodic, right? And so and we have a lot of our customers. I very transparently tell people, none of our customers, woke up that morning thinking I'm going to sign up for Dream Stories and and create like a bunch of different books or subscribe to books. However, what they do is that they want to get a book for right now for a gift, as you mentioned. But then, but then they see, okay, oh, wow, this is actually a service. It's not a one-time product. It's actually a service that I can get a continuation on, because as you know, the use case is there. The kid will want to read every night, right? And actually the parent, as you actually give me another hint, which is the parent actually is the one that wants to buy another one, so he doesn't have to read the same one over and over again, right? And so I think that there's a lot of like, for lack of a better word, skill and process that comes a bit from my experience in building a service, that not a product but a service.
Interesting. And so if it's serialized, then it can also kind of grow with your kid, because as I was kind of walking
Exactly.
through onboarding, which onboarding for the product is so elegant and so simple. It says like, well, how old are you? So you're like, I'm 7. And then the next year you're like, I'm 8. And so the series can grow it's just making me think of like Stranger Things, which is, the new season's about to come out. And so they have to change and adapt because the kids got older.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, that's a good point, right? And that's actually one of the things. Once people caught on to that, they ask us a lot about this, right? So sometimes they want us to we have had, we're new company, but we had, I actually, to be honest, it surprised me how much people want to do that even a few months apart, because, particularly children, they're very young, they grow very quickly, and basically age the child accordingly. And I want to have the topics like evolve the reading language, all these other things, right?
Yeah, 100%. Okay, great. So you start the company. How did you finance the company?
Yeah, so we raised from a few friends. I mean, I've friends, investors, but I've like I said, I started a number of companies, most of them venture backed. I've also had a prior exit, so I put in a little bit of my money, raised a few from others, so we're well capitalized.
So you go to your investor cohort. You're like, hey, me, the music guy. I did a food company. I'm thinking about getting into children's books. Were they like, where is my checkbook? Let me sign on the bottom line. Did it take much convincing? What was the pitch?
Yeah, and so I'm glad you asked, actually, because it's interesting. Like literally, one of my investors said something akin to what you're hinting at, which is like, I would not think this is the thing you're gonna do, or that or I would not invest in this if it wouldn't be for you being attached to it, because but to be honest with you, that's kind of what attracts me to it as well. I like this. Things generally look great in hindsight. Things that become great look great in hindsight. I kind of like the sort of the odd topic that people will be like, for a lot of time, for example, with Kinko, my food company, mentioned I was the juice guy. It's like, why is he doing juices? Like, this guy helped build Spotify, and now he's doing juices. We can get into it later, but I kind of like that. I like that it's in a sense, you could say a little bit the underdog in a way, or putting myself in that position and trying to capture something that I believe I see that other people don't. Because generally, I think that if something is very obvious, is also extremely competitive, and which tends to dilute the opportunity down as well, right? So yeah, so it do take some convincing in that regard, right? Because I had to kind of explain why I believe this, and then after I showed and explained to people like my vision, my strategic vision for what I believe content is going to go, the follow-up question was that one. Okay, but why start with children's books? And that of course takes some convincing, right? But I'm completely convinced that's the right approach for us, and I certainly would not do it differently.
No, and strategically, it seems smart. I mean, children's books has to be greater than 50% of the book purchases, right?
Yeah, no, of course, and there's also something which is that the in products, we also live in a if you're in media, right, you play in the attention economy, right, and so anyone that plays in attention economy is competing with, the Netflixes, the TikToks, and all these other things, right, and it's actually a brutal industry. I mean, as trying to grow like a media property is very difficult to fight for sort of attention. And it's also becoming harder, particularly with companies again like Sora, which are basically giving away tremendous amount of frankly compute and value to people for free, right? So it's actually quite nuts to try to compete there to a point where even being a great product is not sufficient. So you have to kind of figure out a way to make distribution work for you. So of course, if you go with but again, because of these products in the marketplace, people are starting to expect the digital products to be free. At least extremely generous, which requires extreme amounts of capital to do. And again, and it's almost a fight to the death, in terms of lower margins and so on and so forth. And so in my case, I wanted to set up something where I knew that we could have good economics from day one, because I just knew that essentially just meant that we were just more resilient to competition, right? And so on and so forth. And I actually had one, you asked me about investor skepticism in a way, but one actually investors in a sense said something he said it, I didn't, which was, no, I actually love it because I think people will come to expect digital goods to be free, 100% free, and they will only come to pay for physical goods, right? So he actually thought it was genius, right? And I was like, okay, he said it, not I, right? But that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And like you said, it's an experience, reading a book to your kid is an event, it's not really a thing, or if they talk about like humans interaction with AI is largely going to be dictated by taste, so that there's always going to be a human in the loop. And in this case, the human in the loop is a kid,
Yeah.
I mean,
actually the Guardian as well, right? Which is also another interesting dynamic, right? Which is the one of the big inspiration points for me is as it's kind of PR friendly for me to say Walt Disney, right? But one thing, the story specific I like to tell about Walt Disney is that when he had the epiphany for Disneyland, he was at the merry-go-round with his daughters, and he had this idea that there should be a place where the entire family can have fun together, not just the kids going around and you're just there, basically, literally just keeping guard, right? And so that's actually, he built Disneyland on that premise, right? Something for the entire family, right? And so one thing that was very important for me with Dream Stories is that, can we make something that is a family thing, and you mentioned the reading part, but also the creation part, right? Because the parent or the guardian that is actually creating, often with the kid next to them, but often otherwise as a gift, they're spending time doing that, and that's also in itself an enjoyable activity for them, right? You also have to think, so it's not even just the final product, the creation is part of the. It's kind of like, as they say, you shouldn't just make the elevator journey shorter. You should make it enjoyable, right? You should make it something that actually they want to do it, right?
cool. I love it. And I'm convinced just from your track record. I mean, you've got a lot of projects and a lot of big wins in a lot of really kind of category defining type brands. So, we're speaking of like Disney. It seems totally plausible in 5 to 10 years that your Disney Plus subscription, you could just turn yourself into Luke Skywalker if you want to and watch the movie, and everyone will be doing that for sure. So book seems like a natural place because not only is it experience, not only is it time with your kids, but also becomes kind of a place marker in time. And you're like, oh yeah, that was kindergarten year. I'm getting sentimental now because my kids are a little bit older, But I can definitely see that, and the position for this is perfect. Now, how many people are on the team?
And so our team currently is 7 people. So we're a fairly small team. Yeah, most of that is engineering. So we're very engineering forward company, and then we have some people helping with customer support and so forth.
Fantastic. And so you raise some money, you got the team together, you get the MVP, and you launch. Where did you get your first customers?
Yeah. So I'm actually someone who has a lot of experience in paid acquisition, which is usually a response that actually investors don't like to hear because they like to sort of the viral hit that hit. But I'm someone who's actually very methodological about these things. Of course, there's a lot of this one hit wonder things that you did this thing, it went viral, but there's of course thousands of them that tried the exact same thing, it didn't work out. So as I told you before, it was very important to me to have the sort of the unit economics that I knew I could actually do this in a very slow and steady if needed, and does that I could actually spend marketing dollars and make the economics work for that. So I actually did get it off paid channels, right? Which I did quite a lot at Spotify as well. It was a different time. I can tell it was a lot cheaper back then. We were Spotify at one point was a top spender on many of the networks right back then. So now it's a different game. But again, if you're have experience in the area, you can probably pull it off. But then that's part of the puzzle, right? Then you start getting referrals. You start getting people share people taking the book to school, to kindergarten, reading, so you get a lot of organic lift out of that. So it's a combination of things.
Yeah. What was the most productive channel for you with the biggest return?
Most productive? It generally tends to be Facebook, that if we're going to talk about one channel, and then there's pockets of others that at times perform, but usually not as sudden, not as stable as Facebook.
Yeah, 100%. And then the website seems kind of intentional. You can't find pricing anywhere. So speak on that point, and then kind of what's the price per book?
Yeah, it's actually interesting. That's one of the things I'm thinking about right now. So it's funny you'd ask. The price generally $60 per book. We do give the part of the reason why it's not shown is because depending on how many books you have, you decide to purchase, you get discounts and so forth on it. Yeah. I'm actually trying to have so it's not intentional though. It's not like I'm trying to hide it or anything like that, but I'm actually trying to think, and I'm actually running some A/B tests to figure out what's the right point to put it, right? And generally I actually want to be very forthcoming with it because we if anything, we actually want to make a quality product, so it comes with a price.
Yeah, 100%. How many books you sold?
Oh man, it's been quite a lot. I wouldn't know top of my mind, but it's getting closer to 100,000 at this point, probably.
My gosh, 100,000
Yeah.
books, dude! Congrats, that's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're based in Stockholm, correct?
Yes, you may know this is the home of Spotify, right? So I'm actually not Swedish. I'm actually Portuguese, but I lived here, in the beginning with Spotify. Then I moved to the US, and I was living in New York for about 8 years, and then my wife and I moved back to Europe, to essentially start our family.
Amazing. It's to Stockholm, incredible. So are most of your sales coming from Europe, or are you in the American markets as well?
No, mostly US. It's also happens to be the market I know the best. Even though I'm based in Europe. So most of US. We do sell everywhere. We actually just we actually just added also non-Latin script. Meaning that you can have in Hebrew or Arabic, so on and so forth, and Cyrillic. So we're actually opening up a few more markets with that. But primarily my marketing efforts are focused on the US.
Incredible. That's awesome. What's something now about your company or your market or your audience that you wish you knew in the beginning?
Great question. I think that I was surprised to the degree that so I'll tell you, it's almost the same answer for good and bad, right? In a way, I'm surprised the amount of people of, particularly parents, and most of our customers seem to be on the parents in the age group, but we have a large segment of also grandparents and older people. that I'm surprised how well they've been able to use the platform. So we're able to build something that's simple enough for them to use. But it came at a lot of cost, right? And a lot of engineering in that and trying to make things extremely simple for them to use. So in a sense, it's both. So in a sense, I'm very happy that we're able to do it. In another one, it took a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's also that last thing I would say is that AI, for anyone working AI, AI is not deterministic, right? It's stochastic. And I've been working in technology for a long time. Generally, when you fix something, it's not fixed for good. With AI, as you know, there's a lot of hallucinations. In our case, it's not a problem because we're a creative platform to begin with. So it's not, but there's a lot of things go wrong that it takes a lot of time to fine tune things to get consistent good results, right? So it's quite hard actually.
Yeah. When you're thinking of paid media on a $60 product, what are you comfortable for customer acquisition cost?
What I usually advise people I don't generally advise unofficial, right? I don't actually do it professional, right? But whenever people ask me this question, I say that, well, agencies in paid media tend to generally do this arbitrage around ROAS of one, sort of return on ad spend of one. It's a bit of a bizarre thing in e-commerce because, of course, you're going to be losing money if you do that, because you're not covering for margins and so forth. So, you'd have to ask them why they think it's a good thing. But there's this weird arbitrage around one. So I kind of usually tell people that if you have not spent anything, you should expect your CAC to be roughly the same as your AOV. So if it's $60, it's probably going to be around the AOV. But then, and that's actually at the point, if it goes above it, that's the point where, paid media is an auction, right? And so how do you win? Well, do you win an auction? Well, you have to outbid people, right? And so if no one's willing to bid above the rows of one, that means, if you bid 61, you're generally going to win. So the question is, so that's why so many companies try to do subscriptions, right? Because they'll probably lose money on first purchase, but then recoup it later, right? And like I said, in our category, it tends to be one-time purchases, because it's a novelty gift. So that's why if you can build a service rather than a novelty, then you're sort of in business, right?
Yeah. What percentage of your sales you think are repeat buyers?
It's a very high percentage actually. It could be higher. Generally I don't share the number not to mislead people, just because there's another question you didn't ask me, which is like, okay, how many templates do you have, right? And I think the only answer for that is it's actually very simple to understand, right? Which is, I can tell the actual answer and I can tell them the right answer. The actual answer is that we have 6 templates. The right answer would be infinite, right? And why? Because if you think about this as a funnel, you can think that, okay, I like episode 1, amazing, right? But then I don't like episode 2. I may like episode 3, but if I churn in 2, I'll never get to episode 3, right? So it becomes too linear of a path for you to have like sustainable retention. So we do have a very high percentage of them that buy the whole series. In fact, you'd be surprised at how many people buy them multiple times because they buy for different family members and so on and so forth. So I'm actually, astonished at it, to be completely honest with you. At sometimes the cart values we get, what I'd call off the street, without straight off paid acquisition, presumably no brand knowledge, and then it jumps to a huge purchase. But I think it could be a lot better, right? And it could be a lot better but for that, you need to build the infinite content machine, which, like I explained to you earlier, to do it well with the proper guardrails, and for both quality and prevent abuse and all these other things, it takes some time to build, right?
Incredible. Very cool. All right. I'm ready to get into the lightning round. Are you ready for the lightning round?
I think so. I'll find out soon.
Prepare yourself. You might need a juice.
Yes.
Okay. So you're an ideas guy. What other ideas do you have sitting around that you think what particularly this audience likes is $1 million annual run rate? So do you have any business ideas you think that could quickly get to a 1 milli ARR?
I think well, yes. The quick is the trick part, right? But I think I have a lot of ideas particularly in healthcare. It's a space where I've, like I said, I helped grew Neco Health in the beginning, and I think it's one area that has tremendous potential, particularly because pardon my French, but the incumbents suck. I actually, when I was building Neko, I kind of said to myself, and this sounds a bit arrogant of me to say, but I was like, well, it's not that hard when the competition is so bad, right? So it's like the barrier is so low that it's actually doesn't take too much to do. Now, it takes too much is a bit of obviously an oversimplification. It's still a lot of hard work to do it, but there's certainly a lot of opportunity there. And if I trust me, if I could clone myself, that's what I would be doing, right? I'm very passionate about what I'm building now. If I could do something else, it'd probably be in healthcare.
Interesting. Maybe that ties into this one. If let's say you sell Dream Stories for $1 billion, what's your next project? Or is there a project? What do you do?
Yeah, honestly, I would probably be healthcare. That would be the next one, right? Because,
Cool.
like I said, healthcare is something that is a bit artisan, not skilled, and that you could certainly scale, building a better experience there.
100%. Is there a entrepreneur CEO that you admire or follow closely?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few that I deal with personally, right? That I was lucky to work with. Obviously one is Daniel of Spotify, right? Who I learned a lot from on a day-to-day basis. So that's probably the one that I relate with the most. There's a few that I find very interesting. One I like to tell is the Ted Turner of CNN. I think it's I really like the guy generally. Like I like his persona, his attitude. But one thing I also find very interesting is that he, in consumer, sometimes there's this thought about, it's hard to sometimes be precise about what problem you're solving because things only look like problems in hindsight. And so for me, it's fascinating the idea of frankly starting CNN because it was something that no one asked for. And yet, the world was ripe for, right? And it only looks obvious in hindsight that, of course, people want to watch news at more convenient times. So it's one that I find his thought process interesting, how we came to it, and I just think it's just energy is really important in what we do in building companies. It seems like extremely like a high energy guy. I actually never met him. He'll probably be one I would actually like to meet.
Hey founders, let me ask you this. Are you building with AI or getting left behind by it? If you're serious about scaling smarter, faster, and bolder, you need to check out aiforfounders.co. It's your go-to resource for cutting through the noise and actually using AI to grow your startup. Each week, AI for Founders drops a sharp, no-fluff newsletter, dives deep with expert guests on the podcast, and hosts monthly workshops where you can get your hands dirty with the real tools and strategies. Whether you're pre-seed or Series B and beyond, launching something new or just staying sharp, AI for Founders gives you the edge you need to win in 2025 and beyond. Hit aiforfounders.co to subscribe to the newsletter, tune into the podcast, and grab your spot in the next workshop. And it's all free. Build smarter, move faster, think bolder with AI for Founders. Now back to the show. This episode is brought to you by MoBurst, the AI-first growth engine trusted by iconic startups like Calm, Robinhood, Reddit, Uber, and Google. MoBurst is a digital full-service mobile-first marketing agency that helps companies to scale and become category leaders. Whether you're finding product market fit or ready to accelerate growth, MoBurst delivers creative, data-driven solutions that help with scale and efficiency and impact. At MoBurst, we're not just guessing what works, we're predicting it. As an AI-first agency, MoBurst uses cutting-edge tools to analyze user behavior, adapt creative in real time, and uncover hidden growth opportunities. The result, marketing that's faster, smarter, and built to convert. From early-stage startups to global brands, we've helped hundreds of companies overcome complex challenges, unlock new audiences, and optimize every metric that matters. At MoBurst, we believe that creative thinking, advanced technology, and data are the core drivers of success at scale. If you're serious about scaling your business with precision and purpose, it's time to talk to MoBurst. Visit moburst.com and let's build something category-defining together. Yeah. Now, Ted Turner, I really admire him too, because I'm always keeping an eye out for kind of like conservationalists, people that are doing good in the world, but create a successful business model around it. I think that's ultimately what's going to save humanity is you got to make doing things right profitable. and he just about single-handedly saved the North American buffalo, you know,
Correct. Yeah. That's
and
very true.
and
Yeah.
and created an incredible like food franchise around it. And I mean, buffalo is delicious. So, you know, it's like there was incentive to save this beautiful animal that's kind of iconic for the American West. And being a Colorado boy, you know, he gets points in my book for that. Um,
And of
cool.
course, he married Jane Fonda too, so doesn't hurt.
Yeah, not bad. Not a bad run on that guy. They're
Yeah.
pretty incredible. Okay.
And won the America's Cup is also like you know. So yeah, yeah, the fun life. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. What's something Spotify did wrong?
Oh, the list is long, man. I mean, that's the thing. Like when you're inside the company, right? You do a lot of things that don't work out. I mean, some you can call experiments. You know that you have to run them to do it. Others, I think, were, you know, you think about it 9 times should we have gotten it in the first place, and there's a list. There's a long list of those. I think there's obviously a lot of them that I'm probably shouldn't share. One I think I can share that we did, because I think, you know, it's so old that I think no one will come after me. Is that in the beginning, or very early on, we built a download store. Many people don't know we had this, but this was actually something that we had to build, you know, at our requirement with labels. And, you know, it made no sense in the context of Spotify, right? It was, so again, depending if you think it was a mistake or not, because, you know, no one at Spotify really believed that was going to be the future of Spotify. We had to build it to please sort of labels. And, you know, lo and behold, no one used it, right? And we pulled the plug. So was it a failure? I don't know, maybe we had to do it to prove them that no one wanted it, right? But it was just a bit of a bizarre thing in the context of Spotify. Why would you want it, right? It's kind of, it doesn't make sense in the context of Spotify, right? You have access to the world's music, but you also want to buy an MP3 for some reason in the same place. So
Yeah,
go
very
figure that one
innovative.
out.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like one of their biggest innovations and most viral hits had nothing to do with music, which was just the year-end recap when they started doing that a couple of
Yeah.
years back. And I mean, everybody adopted that. It was such a brilliant product. So you're a stories guy, which I love, and you live probably in kind of a fantastic world, mentally at least. If you could live in any historical era in any place, when and where would it be?
I think it's a very good question. I often, to be honest, I think I'll give you a fun answer, right? But I often think that we actually, I feel lucky to live where we live right now, because I think in our lifetime, you know, we're seeing so much transformation. It's actually accelerating extremely fast. I mean, the dawn of AI is an incredible thing. So I'll when I was a little bit younger, I craved for the 20s or something. Now, actually, I'm happy to live in this age. But more recently, you know, don't ask me why. I think actually I know why. You know that Leonard Skinner put out a video for Freebird, right? And I don't know if you've seen this, like 52 years after launch, right? And I was watching the video, which is an incredibly beautiful video, and I was listening to it, and I was like, frankly, just thinking that the sort of the late 60s, early 70s was such a special time. That I kind of got, and I've been talking a lot to my wife about this. Also, from, you know, I also read recently Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, right? And I was thinking about, it was probably such a special time to be alive, right? To have this feeling of, well, freedom, of the discovery of joy for the future. And I think right now we actually live in a time where a lot of people are very, very dark, and they have a very dark, you know, view of the future. And so I probably would say that, right? It is in, I'm happy to be alive now, but I would have liked to experience a bit that societal agreement that times are good, you know, in a way.
Cool. Being Portuguese, any fondness around the conquistadors era? Go back and hang out with Vasco da Gama and those guys?
Oh man, yeah, that was the right answer, right? I should have I should have gone for that. Yeah, it's I suppose so, right? I mean, that's the you know, the other one. Yeah, you know, I'm also a big lover of this sort of Arctic expeditions sort of age. You know, when sort of Shackleton and so forth went down there. Actually, my favorite one is Roald Amundsen, the Norwegian one, the one that actually got to South Pole. if you have a chance to read about this, or if you're interested, it paints this picture of Roald, the Norwegian, is a pro. The other ones are amateurs, right? So it's well, we went there. It was a bit cold. We took a coffee and then we went there and we came back. So it's not as daunting as the Brits for some reason. But so in a sense, I think yes, probably that was an incredible age, right? I mean, this sense of there's things to discover. Funny you mentioned that because actually in Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, he talks about that since those times since actually the discovery of America, that we haven't lived in a time where people where literally you had to change your frame of thinking, how you think about the world. Like we went to the moon, but we knew the moon was there, right? It was not a surprise that the moon was there. Well, it was of course amazing that we got there, but it was not a surprise. Whereas discovering America, challenges all your conceptions of what, I mean, it literally created Protestant church, right? So I think that, but so why am I interested about living right now? Because, in the age of AI, a lot of people would describe it as an alien, right? That we're creating an alien entity here on Earth. So I think it's kind of similar in that nature. That we will need new ways of thinking about the future. And of course, that's scary for many people, but it shakes you at your core, right? Like my previous view of the world may no longer apply based on these things. And so in that way, we live in that era, right?
Yeah. There's a spirit of that, of like the explorer that reawoke, it feels like a couple years ago with AI, where you're like, oh, not all the big players are so secure in their positions. We haven't seen the best of what innovation can really do. It does feel like we're on the beginning of a big explorer phase, doesn't it?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, because again, a lot of things can shake your world, of course, right now, right? But if you'd wake up tomorrow and they tell, okay, there's an alien spaceship, you'd question a lot of the things you thought about the world of reality, right? And I think in this way is akin to that, right? And it's akin to the conquistadors era, like you mentioned, because it was a real possibility that you're going to find something that just no one had a clue was there. And again, why did it lead to the Protestant church? Because there was literally things that were now patently, false in the way that we believe the world was, because now there's evidence because it's there. Like you can't deny it, right? So I think that's fascinating, right? And that's not to say anyone's right or wrong. It's just that it forces you to think differently, right? You won't have a choice. You can't not see it.
The Vatican learned that lesson too, because when the Pope started releasing memos that was like, hey, you know what? If there are aliens, God created those too, and it's all good. It fits underneath our papal
Terms of
robe.
service.
Like, wait,
Yes.
is the Pope telling me there's aliens? What's happening right now?
Yeah. It's so they made it more broad. Yeah, but again, it's a fascinating time, right, to be alive, right? And that's why I would recommend that book as well, The Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Management, because it talks about that, right? It talks about, and that is something before reading I hadn't thought about, that while I was mentioning the 60s being such an interesting time, we knew the moon was there. No one was surprised that the moon was there, right? And that the difference is that this is so different that it just will change the way you think.
We don't know what's there. Yeah.
Yes.
So exciting. Ricardo, this has been awesome. Everybody, please check out DreamStories.ai. You can upload pictures right there from the first page and start to really interact with the technology. The whole presentation is beautiful. Congratulations to you, sir. I know you're a big supporter of the World Wildlife Foundation, so I want to give them a shout out real quick. This is wild.org with nearly 50 years global experience mobilizing international coalitions for the protection of wilderness, working in over 40 countries. Wild has substantial reach, and don't we all know it? So shout out to them. Ricardo, what's a good place for people to connect with you online?
So I'm I don't work so much. I'm a bit off social media, but you can find me on LinkedIn, Ricardo Vice Santos. Or you can send me an email as well, letter R at DreamStories.ai.
Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Right. Thank you.